Good morning. I'm Alvin Shim. I'm the Office and Communications Administrator at Tierra Nueva. Kelsey and Gaten and I continue to attend Bethany Covenant. We used to be second service people, and now these days we're as close to 10 a.m. as possible people. We're going to read Psalm 62 together this morning. In different translations, Psalm 62 has what's probably a musical notation, but the meaning is unclear. In this chapter, it's after verse 4 and verse 8, and it's usually in italics. Selah, Selah. I was taught this was a nod to allow the song's lyrics to reverberate in the air and to rest around you for a second. So you can take a pause. You're supposed to take a pause in the reading or the singing, and let the music flow around you. So this is Psalm 62. For God alone, my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be greatly shaken. How long will all of you attack a man to batter him like a leaning wall, a tottering fence? They only plan to thrust him down from his high position. They take pleasure in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. For God alone, O my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. On God rests my salvation and my glory. My mighty rock, my refuge is God. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Those of low estate are but a breath. Those of high estate are a delusion. In the balances they go up. They are together lighter than a breath. Put no trust in extortion. Set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart on them. Once God has spoken, twice have I heard this, that power belongs to God, and that to you, O Lord, belongs steadfast love. For you will render to a man or a woman according to their work. This is a song from David when he realizes, relearns, and reaffirms that God is everything, and he'll continue to do this in his life, as we'll read. David is often surrounded by many kinds of enemies, political, physical, spiritual, and with all the power that he encounters in his life leading up to king and then that he has as king, he learns that there's not many people that he can trust. He's being pulled in many directions, and we know from reading about his life that straying from God as his refuge leads to his destruction and the destruction of his people, the people that he's tasked to govern and to rule and to lead over. This string of psalms, starting from 52 into 64, is loosely inspired, I think, by the crony villain Doeg the Edomite. Doeg the Edomite was a lackey of King Saul, and he did great evil under Saul's command. In 1 Samuel, David is being pursued by King Saul, and he receives refuge from the priesthood in Nob. Doeg the Edomite rats them out to his king. Saul takes the priesthood, he interrogates them, and he actually makes himself out to be the victim in this year. King Saul is nuts. You can read 1 Samuel 22. King Samuel's nuts. They defend themselves. The priests defend themselves and try to point out that the king's accusations are baseless and illogical. What he's accusing them of doesn't make any sense. That they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that it's consistent with the code of the land, with the understanding of how we're supposed to treat each other. King Saul doesn't respond to this claim, to their argument. Instead, he simply orders their death. He says, "Nah, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to have you killed." But King Saul's own royal guards refuse to carry out this order. They're not going to kill a bunch of priests just because the king says so. But no problem. Doeg the Edomite has no problem killing them, and he kills all 85 of them. He kills their wives, their children, all of their livestock. This is the kind of violence and power that David is fleeing from. This ruthless, self-serving, cartel-esque, tantrum-esque, gang-like, chaotic violence from the established powers. This is from the government, the king. So this is a passage whose weight I can't really understand. I can't access this kind of life firsthand. I've never run for my life. I'm not being hunted when I've not been hunted, falsely accused, or correctly accused. It's not when I am falsely accused. It's not by some deranged authority figure, and my societal innocence is largely respected and intact and secure. So I don't know what David is talking about. I don't know what this life is. But the good news is I don't think we're supposed to read all stories like we are the main character. If we don't see ourselves there, I think that's sometimes a good thing. Especially passages like this. And if, like me, you can't imagine what David has gone through and is going through, good news is there are people for us to listen to in this world today that can resonate with this life. We know that David was fiercely loved by God. We read and celebrate his victories, and we teach our kids about when he strays from and returns to God's love, the lessons to be learned there for us. We know that David is a criminal. We know that he's a murderer, that he tried to cover it up, that he took what he wanted. He knew that it wasn't his. Everything that happens to David in this passage, he turns around and eventually he does it to other people as himself when he's king. We know this as a church. We know this, and we know that God loves him so fiercely. And we know that David's soul finds rest in God. King David, David the Goliath slayer, the man after God's own heart, the oft-repenting servant of the Lord, he may be the most human character in the Bible. We see him fleeing from violence. We see him rise up in victory. He's mourning and fasting. He's rubbing ashes on his head. He's dancing in victory with the Lord. His story is the same as ours, and the same especially as our black brothers and sisters fleeing violence from the police, the same as our migrant brothers and sisters crossing the desert, carrying their babies, fleeing violence from their own government and the gangs that rule their homes. It's the same as our neighbors here being held captive by a system that's designed for their failure and perpetual incarceration. If it's happening to our brothers and sisters, then we must realize it's happening to us. We must realize it's happening to us as well. They're running for their lives. They're falsely accused. They themselves are wildly imperfect and sinful and somehow still fiercely, fiercely, fiercely loved by God. This might not be your specific story. It's certainly not mine. But let's read it again this time with our oppressed brothers and sisters in mind. For God alone my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be greatly shaken. How long will all of you attack a man to batter him like a leaning wall, like a tottering fence? They only plan to thrust him down from his high position. They take pleasure in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. For God alone, O my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. On God alone rests our salvation and our glory, our mighty rock, our refuge is God. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Those of low estate are but a breath, those of high estate are a delusion. In the balances they go up, they are together lighter than a breath. Put no trust in extortion, set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart on them. Once God has spoken, twice have I heard this, that power belongs to God, and that to you, O Lord, belongs steadfast love. For you will render to a man or a woman according to their work. If flesh and blood isn't what we're fighting against, and we're fighting against something far more powerful and less finite than individual people, there is a spirit of violence and hatred and anger, and also of apathy, fear, disdain, and a spirit that keeps us complicit in this when we don't act the way that this chapter ends. For you will render to a man or a woman according to their work. Stanza upon stanza about how God is our refuge and he loves us and he'll hold us close, and he's fierce about how possessive he is about us. For you will render to a man or a woman according to their work. That might be the spring that we use to end this devotions. Let's get to work. Let's get to work together.